Welcome to the swamp. We're back in another island survival game where the islands are infested with overgrown lizards and jaguars. Let's saddle up and try to get through this island survival game called Project Castaway. My name is Excalligator. I rate games based on many categories that would fit into most survival games based on a 1 to 5 system. If a category does not apply, it will not affect the game's overall score. Now let us get started. Project Castaway is a game where you are, surprise surprise, in another plane crash and you need to survive among several islands out in the middle of the ocean. You were out there to begin with to look for your uncle who has gone missing. So, at the same time as trying to survive and escape, you need to find signs of your uncle as well as the other people who were here before you and try to get out alive. You start off with a cutscene of your character monologuing on why he is out in the middle of the ocean, but the weather is about to take you out as well as your plane. It is really nice of the plane to wait until you are done talking to the recorder before deciding to crash. But once you're out, you're told to swim to the closest island. Now, it kind of plops you between like 3 islands or so you can actually start off at either of these islands and have a different experience from your previous playthrough if you wanted to play again. Though the one thing is that the radio tower, in my opinion, is the better island to start, as it only has one predator who is easy to kill, and the others have jaguars who are really quick to kill you. Not to mention loads of food to start off with on that radio tower. Now, you are given a small tutorial to start with, but it is kind of lackluster as there are several gameplay elements that really isn't explained well, and even as I write this review, there are a few game elements that I still have not figured out, and there's not a lot of information online. And one that I wasn't really told about in-game until it was too late was the fact that you can only save at a bed, and you have to do it manually, it's not automatic. So I went about an hour of gameplay without saving, only to get killed by a jaguar, and the next thing I knew is I was seeing the intro cutscene again. I'll get into that more when I get there, but anyway, the start of the game, I'm gonna give a 3 out of 5. Generic story, cutscene, lackluster tutorial, and a fairly standard start. The exploration is of course needed, as the majority of materials are one-time use, so when you cut down a tree or mine a rock, it will stay down. Now, I'm not sure about plants and animals, but it seems like they respawn about once every in-game week or so. The forums for the game say that they don't respawn, but one of the creatures on my starter island that I killed showed up again days later, so that tells me that they do respawn, but I could be wrong about that. Either way, on each island, you will find leftover notes and clues from the people who were there before you, with different stories on different islands. So you can also find unique items to collect, and by opening your journal, you can read the story and the lore of the different items. You can either just leave them there, or bring them back to your base and have a little collection pile. Just be careful, as when you sail back on your raft, they might bounce right off and be lost forever. I had to restart one of my last saves because I lost Wilson into the tempest of the ocean. Most islands will have some resources in abundance, but others will have other resources that are more limited, such as I really only found one island with bananas, so I took them home so I can farm them. You can also find blueprints for different building pieces and crafting materials, all in the different islands as well. They're usually found in places of interest. Now, the downside to this section is that there are not many islands to discover, and a few of the islands that are there are barren, and if you sail away from these group of islands, you're not going to find much. And from what I saw online, it looks like it just kind of puts you to the other side of the map and you cycle through the map again instead of hitting an invisible wall, though I haven't tested that theory. The underwater, from what little I saw, seems to have very few things to find. While there are some resources like seaweed to gather and sharks to hunt, there is not really much in terms of the discoverable places. I only really found one, which is needed for the main story, of course, but it was infested with sharks. But for the exploration, I'm gonna rate this section a 3 out of 5. There are fun things to discover and find, but really it's kind of lackluster in terms of how much there is. I just want to say thank God I waited to write this review until after the first update, because I would have only complained about how the hunger stat constantly drained to the point that you couldn't do anything at all. You had to just keep constantly eating to stay alive, but it has been fixed, so hunger does not drain as much and food replenishes more of your hunger bar than it did before, so now I don't really have to stress out about it as much as I did. Now, there are status ailments, though I rarely found any. Sometimes you can get a freezing effect from sleeping outside in the rain, which fire will cure you from, but you can also be poisoned from various creatures, and you can get food poisoning from raw meat, all of which can be cured over time with little to no effect to you. Really, I only noticed food or water, like your food or water stat, going down a little bit faster when I had a status. The poison did hurt my health, but I counted it with just a healing bandage, so it didn't really bother me. There is a sleeping status for you to rest often, though it seems perfectly paced enough so you only really need to sleep once a day, which is fine because I slept at night anyway because I couldn't see at night. You can also wake up at any time if you sleep, so if something is wrong, you can just hit a button and your character will wake right up. Your hunger will deplete while sleeping, though it isn't enough to bother you. Now, the hunger bar. There is an overall hunger bar, but there is also two small ones, one for protein and one for carbs. Protein comes from meat, while carbs will come from fruit and veggies. I never really had an issue with the two smaller ones going low. You can start to starve from the overall hunger meter going down, but the other two will still be up. I also noticed that it's not an instant death sentence if you are starving in one of the meters. When you start to starve, your health doesn't deplete, it just kind of reduces your stats and other things, and makes other meters go lower faster, which makes your survival a little bit harder, and it will eventually kill you, but it's not quick. Overall, I'm gonna rate this survival a 3.5 out of 5. It is a decent overall survival game, with some variations, though there isn't really much that will affect you negatively that makes you worry that much. The building aspect is not really needed, as I didn't really see a difference from my playthrough with and without a base. Now, you can make a small mobile base with your raft, though it's not the best thing as it is affected by strange physics from the ocean waves, which can affect items falling off of the boat, and even if it was in the item box, which I'll get to more in the lag section, and I'll also get to the item box in a second here. But first, the building itself. You can place down a blueprint and bring forth all the various materials to build it. What I don't like about this is that a lot of the items that are required, you have to carry it in your hands, which is common in most games, but it does limit how much you can carry at a time, so I kind of wish that there was a sled you could bring, so you can carry more of larger items to bring back with you, instead of like one barrel at a time or one tire at a time. You can either make a simple tet, or you can build a full-on hut or house with the hammer tool, which will bring up more advanced building items, as well as some decor like chairs. With the crafting, there is no workstation in a sense that you don't have to build like a workbench in order to craft a bunch of stuff at a time. There are some stations that help you acquire new materials, like the spinning wheel for rope or the furnace for bronze, but that's pretty much it. You don't really need a large space to build. Crafting can be a bit annoying as, you do need the larger items sometimes, so you will need to have them in your hands, while the smaller items will have to be in your bag in order to craft like a spear for something. I feel like the durability system is also a bit weak as well. While I don't mind the first tier being a bit easier to break, the second and third tier of items still broke kind of fast in my opinion. Now, there are stat levels in the games for various things, like, you can increase your running skill or your crafting skill, and others like that as well. The crafting skill, however, will gate you in some recipes from being made until you are the right level to make them. The reason I think that is there is because most of the materials can be found on most islands, so you can get gold right off the bat. Hell, I even found, tin and copper to make bronze on my starter island. And not only that, you can find the recipes to some of the rarest stuff in the game very easy and early on. So I think the crafting level is there to block you from making that all, early game. But it is kind of annoying when you have the materials, but you just can't assemble it. Now, the item box. There is no chest system. Instead, you kind of just throw items into a box from your bag. But it just kind of piles up in the box. To get it out, you would have to sift through everything and interact with it just to pick it up again. It's easy to deposit, but it's annoying to withdraw, basically. Now, I do like the shelving system, as it acts just like the item box. However, it has like more little like boxes within the shelf itself, so it allows for better organization. So I was able to separate my items off easily in various areas of the shelf. And just like in Stranded Deep, items that are placed on the ground will not despawn, so you can just make piles on the beach of all your collected supplies without worry. Now, the farming is a pain in the ass. I did try to do the farming so I could have, more food available to me, but it is so confusing to learn. I looked in-game for any farming guides, and there's no explanation. I then go to the forums to look for any explanation, and there's one where somebody was asking the exact same question, but the dev that responded back didn't really answer it in a satisfactory way. The only thing I figured out on my own is that you need to fertilize the plants by, putting a shovel into the compost bin, after it's made compost, and then putting that shovel into the planter, and that's how you fertilize it. But you also need insecticide to protect it, as you'll get a lot of various bugs that will, make it so your plants will not produce anything in return, which sucks. I don't think I ever got a plant to make more than one fruit, so I ended up giving up. Not to mention the insecticide requires materials that are also kind of out of my way to get, so I don't want to have to do that every single time just to plant a single fruit, which, by the way, you have to replant every time you harvest. So it was not worth doing, and I just kind of stuck to the animal traps, which were way more consistent with catching birds and crabs in order to feed myself. Overall, I'm going to give this section a 4 out of 5. The building system is okay, I don't really need to make many stations, and the crafting is simple enough. I really only didn't like the durability system and the farming system. The PvE is shit in this game. Most of the creatures will avoid you, like the crabs and the turtles, but the more aggressive ones don't really have any form of attack patterns or anything. They just kind of target you, lock on, and auto-attack. Komodo dragons are the easiest thing to kill, as walking backwards will keep you out of range of their attacks, but you can still hit them with your spear. Now, jaguars, on the other hand, will two-shot you guaranteed, so avoid these at all cost. And of course you have the aggressive insects, which are just annoying as hell. I don't really understand why spiders and scorpions are chasing you around the island. I've never seen that in any video game, unless they were, oversized ones, but these are just regular-sized bugs. There are also the hornets that will buzz at you, but that's realistic to me, so I don't care. Just hit them with a spear and just be done with it. I can't really comment on the sharks because I wasn't really in the water that much. I was too much of a pussy to swim around in deep waters with my thalassophobia, but I do know they're probably going to be a problem and are very angry as well. Though, besides that, I realized that the pathing is broken on a lot of the creatures, as you might see footage here of me trying to skirt around a jaguar to get a note that I thought was important but ended up being nothing, only for the jaguar to follow me with his high aggro range, and then stop as I touch water to turn around and keep walking. It was kind of weird. So for this section, it's going to be a 2 out of 5. This game seems to be in very early access, which is why there is limited content as well as limited gameplay and mechanic systems, but it does seem active in development with an update from the main developer at least once every 2 months or so. I think the majority of the bugs that I found within this game are more physics-based than anything. A few of the issues from the first few days have already been fixed, so the section might be a bit out of date already, but from what you can see here, item boxes weigh down your raft badly. I assumed it was just, heavy items, but after taking out all the stone and ore, just leaving a bunch of feathers and rope left, it was still too heavy. So I removed everything, and it was still too heavy. So the only way to fix it, of course, was to build a second item box on the other side of the raft in order to balance it out. It didn't really end there, as when I was trying to sail across to the next island over, a storm hit, causing all of the items to bounce really badly, and some of them ended up being lost into the ocean from that. but it is not limited to just the ocean. There are times when I'm, on land that suddenly an item would just kind of fly into the air when you interacted with it. Typically, when I was interacting with the compost or the farming plot, trying to place like a compost thing into it or place the insecticide, it would just kind of like bounce up suddenly into the air and drop nearby. But besides that, I've already explained the farming issues as well as the enemy pathing, so we can just breeze over that. And at one point, I did find what looked like a massive tree underwater. That may mean something is under the water there, but as I said before, I was too much of a pussy to jump in and see, so I don't really know if it was a mapping issue or just a secret that was hiding from me there. And the last thing I want to point out is that I found the crashed plane that you start off with. It was washed up on shore instead of out in the water where it usually is, so I walked up to it to see if I could interact with it, maybe fix it, only to find it bouncing around as if it was a volleyball. Like I was able to just walk into it and it would just kick off a couple of feet away from me. So that was kind of funny. But either way, besides the graphical and physics issues, I did have low frame drops. The whole game, I could not get the game to go higher than an average of like 30 FPS. Sometimes it went lower to 27, 25, and other times it went up to like 47, but I wasn't able to determine what is causing it. I lowered my graphics, I turned off VSync, I turned off motion blur and a few other things, but I didn't really see a difference at all. And as a reminder, I do have a 3050 with an i7, so it's not the worst computer in the world, but I kind of classify it as an above average, if anything. So your experience may differ based on your build, or it might be that the game is just badly optimized. So all in all, it's mostly graphical issues that I saw, nothing really that halted my game, and some mild frame drop issues. So I'm gonna rate this section a 3 out of 5. My overall score for Project Castaway is going to be a 2.6 out of 5. I think this game needs a bit longer to cook, as there is still a lot of missing contents, bugs to iron out, and I do think there is something there that is good if given enough time and development. So I would say keep your eye on this game, see how it progresses on its journey to its full launch. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Time to get started on my next review, and I will see you next time. And that is the end of this video. If you liked my review, please subscribe to this channel, as I will be making more in-depth reviews of open-world sandbox survival RPG games, including those that no one ever talks about from the deepest, darkest depths of Steam. Some games that even look like the muck at the bottom of my pond. If you have any suggestions for what game to do next, please comment below and like this video. Florida Gator Man out.